And it is live. So, welcome to episode 27 of Overgrow the System to Kieley from Parkland Flower, a very, very awesome grower. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. I'll put out a huge disclaimer right at the start is that I'm not the grower.
Well, you're
Well,
involved.
I mean, I love the plant. I'm more of a maker myself. I have made a lot of different products for medical patients and friends and family. But my grower, Dustin, he's the one that's taking care of the babies, and he's really great at it. He's got 25 years of growing under his belt, and we got some really neat cultivars that he's been collecting for years, and so we're really excited to finally get started.
I've been kind of keeping up with your news. It's super exciting. You're getting that licensing, everything's starting to open up.
Yeah, so August 14th, we were granted our Health Canada license for a micro cultivation, and was 10 long months of waiting, and yeah, burned through a lot of money getting there, but
I
we're
imagine.
here now, and yeah, we're just really excited. We'll be
So,
growing out in Parkland County, which I'm excited about as well.
how do they define micro cultivation? Like, what
So
is
a
that?
micro, there's two cultivation classes, and well, three technically if you count nursery. So you have a nursery, which basically you have 50 square meters of flowering space. So you can only have 50 square meters of flowering canopy. But the nice thing with a nursery is that you can have as many clones and cuttings as you want. So plants and veg that have not flipped a flower. Then you move up to a micro cultivation license, which is 200 square meters of plant canopy. And that's in total. That includes your cuttings, your veg, and your flowering plants. So that's about 2153 square feet. So that's kind of your cap. And then anything above that 200 square meters, you have to go for a standard cultivation license, which is, and that's anyone from, 5,000 square feet up to hundreds of thousands of square feet or acres, even
Yeah.
if you're looking at an
Aurora.
outdoor. Yeah, those are the big guys. So
Gosh, that is interesting. So they do it
yeah.
by square footage of your canopy. So you can't,
Hmm.
they don't even do it by like what's in flower and what's in veg, eh?
No, for micro cultivation, it's just whatever plant footprint you have.
Well, that is extremely interesting. The whole aspect of putting in 10 months of work and getting real official is it's super inspiring, like
Oh,
that's
thank you.
hey, somebody's got to do it, and I'm glad to see that you can, because it's a little bit disappointing watching them turn it all into just it's so monopolized by their essentially their cronies, you know what I mean? Like to see somebody normal get their foot in the door is a very happy day.
Oh, thank you. And there's there's about, I believe the number's just at about 60 now. So there's 60 micro license holders in Canada in total. We were number 9 in Alberta for a cultivation license, and there's 2 micro processing licenses in Alberta as well. And it is tough being a trailblazer. It definitely is. We are setting the stage for what craft cannabis is really going to be, and what it's going to be about. And the thing about the cannabis community is that we've always been a collaborative community. We've always been about sharing, when it comes to growing tips and trying to control your pests, sharing clones and cultivars, working together to fill orders. All of that kind of stuff has always been a part of our community. And that side really kind of got taken away right at the
For
start of
sure.
legalization. A lot of bigger companies did lobby that we weren't going to transition these smaller operators until after we legalized the rec market. So there were a lot of big growers that could grow for the medical market from 2001 on. But then, in October 2018, when they flipped to the rec market, that's when the micro cultivation license became legal and that you could apply for it. And it is tough. I mean, it costs a lot of money, even just in fees, you know, architects, engineers, electricians, like HVAC, like all of these things, just cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. It all costs a lot of money, and it can be quite fiscally onerous. So, you know, I always say that you can't change it unless you're in it. And I've always been a big cannabis advocate for medical patients. And, you know, I think being on the inside, the government doesn't know what they don't know, you know, and they're getting information from all different sides. And I think they're really starting to hear our voice. You know, it's one of the reasons I formed the Alberta Cannabis Micro License Association. It was so, you know, we could combine our voice and give the government a little bit more education about craft cannabis, about, you know, small operators and small business, because we are definitely the future of cannabis in Canada.
It,
I believe.
I completely agree with you. It reminds me of that saying. It's like what gets observed gets measured. You know, like they,
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand, the majority of this podcast is talking about ways where we can operate in the blind spots of the government. You know, so that
Mm-hmm.
their just useless impact is negated. But the fact that you are at the tip of the spear pushing this through the government, you know, trying to get those rusty gears to turn, it's I'm glad you're doing it, you know.
It's, you know, they you've got a lot of stigma surrounding our industry. You've got a lot of stigma surrounding the plant. And so you have a lot of bureaucrats in not only the federal government, but at the provincial level and in the municipal level. And Health Canada did craft a fairly comprehensive set of regulations for us to follow. And there's been a lot of interpretation of it, of how you know, you're supposed to operate within it. And I think a lot of people went way above and beyond what is actually required, and that's what kind of scared some people. And you know, when you got these small farmers, like with outdoor grows and things like that, and they're getting their license and they're putting, you know, about anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 into their operation, that's a little bit more manageable for some of us, right? And it's doable. And we just really want to show that it is doable, that you can get there and you can make a living. A lot of people, you know, that worked in bigger operations and bigger organizations, they're like, it's too small, you're not going to be able to make money. And right now, that's kind of, we haven't seen a ton of people make a ton of money. This is not, you know, what we were expecting. There wasn't enough retail. There's lots of different challenges that we face. But I think the longer we're at it, and the more efficient we get with our operations, and we start building our brand and really start feeding our backyard as well. Like I want my cannabis to be sold in Alberta. I don't,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like I
do.
want our story just the way it was, you know, when we worked in the gray, that, you know, we were growing for our friends and family. And
that's part of why I can't handle the legal. Like, I don't understand why I'm paying money that's going to be siphoned into Montreal and Toronto. Like,
well, and that's the other thing. I find it very disappointing when I walk into a store and I see Hexo everywhere. And I'm like, okay, these guys, number one, wouldn't let a pipeline go through. So why are we supporting their cannabis? But that's because the retailers are forced to right now, because there's not enough supply. And we're going to get there. I mean, we are literally less than 2 years into this, you know. It's only
agree. It's like it's not natural.
It's going to get there.
You know, it's not a natural state where the market's at. It's totally influenced by all these other factors that are slowly going to have to burn off. They couldn't possibly stay, you know?
Well, if you look at even just the taxation structure of what everybody wanted to get their piece of the pie. And, you know, one of the ways that, you know, advocates and industry had convinced the government that this was this was a good thing, was the dollar signs, right?
Exactly.
And but have you seen that happen in any other commodified industry? If you look at dairy, oil and gas, forestry, wheat, all of these industries, beef, all of these industries were subsidized, a lot in the beginning to get them off the ground and to support, Canadian infrastructure. And yet cannabis out the gate was taxed to the gills. So, if I sell a 7-gram package, there's $1 per gram. So that's immediately $7 in excise tax, right? In a 7-gram package immediately. And it's too much. If I sold a pack of seeds, a 10-pack of seeds, I have to charge $10 just in excise tax. So when it comes to the lobbying efforts of retailers and for other cultivations and for the Canadian public, we should be really focusing on pushing the government to remove some of the taxation, because that is where we're really falling down, where we really need to support the industry and get it going, and then slowly add the taxes once we're established. And then you guys can make your money. But the thing is that when we're building these cultivation facilities, we're injecting a ton of money into our local infrastructure. I'm hiring people anywhere from cleaners to, trim teams to builders, construction, like all of this type of infrastructure is already being injected into the economy. So I wish that they would take that a little bit more into account, as opposed to taxing it to death with an excise tax, and then the province actually taxes on top of the excise tax. So you get a double whammy on taxes as a consumer. And of course, the consumer has to eat that. Yeah. And so, I really want to see more changes to that, and, and push towards the government to, to ease up the burden on especially small producers.
I mean, they're really trying to. It was obvious, from day one. It was just you looked at it and you saw all the people that were in the black market, and you just knew they're not going to transition. They're not going to become part of the new legal market because they've been shunned. There's a very huge wall for them to jump to get into that other kind of the market. So they just stayed in the black market, and I don't understand why the government would have seen, they couldn't have not seen that happening. Maybe they could have. I like to assume that most of the time it's stupidity, not malice, right? But
when you look at the security clearance requirements,
it might be malice.
Anybody who worked in the illicit industry before, if you have anything on your record with regards to cannabis, then you're going to get dinged for it. I mean, only 50% of security clearances have been approved that have been applied for.
Hold up.
Yeah.
So wait a second. They made it legal to grow, but now the people that had been punished previously for doing it. What? That's amazing.
So their mandate is to keep organized crime out of there. But I mean, if you were growing cannabis for a few medical patients and you got caught selling a little bit on the side, because it's really expensive to grow cannabis and they're expecting you to grow it for free for medical patients, and so if you got caught, and then, you basically, we had trouble with a security clearance over a traffic violation.
I honestly couldn't roll my eyes any harder at the government complaining about organized crime,
It is. It's tough, but there's two different arms to the government, when it comes to getting these security clearances.
I couldn't pick a bigger mafia than the government. No.
I can't rage on them too much because I got my license, and
that's a fair point. That is a fair point.
I really need to play in their sandbox.
I meant to be.
I'm not saying that the change is not needed. It absolutely is, and they are trying hard. Like every person that I've spoken with at Health Canada, they want to see us succeed. They really do, and they're frustrated as well. Some of the reviewers, they have to play in that box that the regulations have set, and they're getting better. Like, licenses are getting issued faster because they're getting better at reviewing the applications, and they are improving. And they don't have enough people. Then COVID happened, so now they had to transition everybody to work from home, which
Oh,
created
crazy.
some delays for us and for a lot of licensed applicants. And yeah, it is very frustrating, but it's legal, and we do have to be grateful for that.
I,
You know,
when I was beginning
I
this,
did not enjoy.
I meant to avoid dragging the government so hard because it's, it's a good sign. It's like trying to keep on the silver lining because you're through the door. You got your foot in the door. You're making it work.
Yeah,
Um,
making it work, but still haven't been able to make any money at it. So we've been working for free for 3 years trying to get this off the ground. So that is also really tough. And so we have been, really pushing the government to, hey, how about you guys issue a conditional license, and then upon security clearance, we can, at least then you can kind of operate and get going.
that's a good
You
point.
know, the other thing is, why do we need a cultivation license? Because, so say for tomatoes, right? You have somebody who's growing tomatoes, right?
100%.
You have a farmer who grows tomatoes. Now their tomatoes raw can go right to the grocery store. There's no big um, regulations or anything like that. They have to be clean and all
I
that
can
stuff.
sell them right to your fridge.
Exactly. But when they get processed, when they get put into a can and you have canned tomatoes, now you have a whole set of food safety regulations, because you
Right.
don't want to kill someone,
Right.
right? You
Yeah.
don't want someone to get botulism because it's a
Yeah. In the
canned,
can.
right? You don't want somebody to be food poisoned, listeria, E. coli, salmonella, all of these things. So now you're in this food safety box. And the thing with cannabis is that I can produce all kinds of cannabis in my 200 square meters, but I'm not allowed to process it without a processing license. And the processing license involves having good production practices that I have to follow, as well as a quality management program. And so the question I always wonder with the government is, why do we have to have a cultivation license when the processor is the one that has to take on the liability and making sure that the product's safe? Once the product is tested by an analytical lab, it's deemed safe for Canadian consumers. So why does the journey from seed to processing, from seed to cure, why does that have to be so heavily regulated when a test is going to confirm that it's safe?
Well, you know, we could be confused, but then, you look at how look at how the government enforces ranchers to process cattle. It's amazing. You're not allowed to shoot a cow on your field and butcher it. And I mean, maybe you are nowadays because they've recently been changing laws, but for a long time, the only option for a farmer is to put it on a truck, have it shit itself in fear for like 8 hours as it heads to the slaughterhouse with 1,000 other cows, And that
Yeah.
was what we had enforced as the only right way to pass these regulations. And it's just, anybody that's looking at it with half of one eye open can see that this is not helping, right? But
Hmm.
it's the only way that they can make sure that their lowest common denominator isn't too low, right? The
Yeah.
government,
Well, it's mass production. It's a
yeah,
byproduct of mass production.
it's insane. The government can't do
Yeah.
anything well, I swear to God.
You have a lot of different characters in the government and a lot of different arms. And, the thing is that Health Canada took on the cannabis file, and Health Canada is not there to improve economic impact. Their mandate is not to build the industry. Their mandate is to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And so they are going to do that in the only way that they know how, and that's through regulation. So I think as we start seeing, I think silver linings to COVID is that, now we're in this massive depression. It's not just a recession anymore. We are in a full on depression of our economy. And I think that is going to encourage economic development arms of the federal government to be looking at this file and saying, hey, we're the first G7 country that's legalized cannabis. And it's not just about exporting the cannabis. We can export our expertise now.
Uh-huh.
And so we really need to be looking at that as an export as well.
Not to
Looking at
mention the fact that Americans are coming behind us and we're giving Canadians an opportunity to learn so that they can be like I mean, from personal anecdotes, like I learned this stuff back when I was in the wheelchair in 2016 because I at that point, as soon as I had 2 casts on my feet, I was like, if a cop comes through the store and I have a bunch of pot plants, I'm not going to care, you know? And that was just the point where I flipped that switch and I just went, I'm all in. And ever since that, it's been a learning curve. And I realized that I jumped a few rungs on that learning curve that I can help other people. And it put me in this weird position where I'm at, like you're saying, you're at the tip of the spear, right? And everything else is following and it's going to come, but somebody has to be there taking the hits. Sorry, I wrote down that I got to ask you a question about this processing license, because it's extremely interesting to me that you do the processing part, because that is a huge blind spot for me. Like I can grow a plant, but after that is where I'd like to talk to you about.
Sure. So like processing it as into like edibles or into extracts and things like that. So how I kind of got into processing was back in 2012. My father-in-law was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is brain tumors. He had 4 brain tumors. He had 3 removed, and then there was one or two really small ones kind of back in his occipital lobe.
The dangerous area.
Yeah, and he woke up blind, and which was really scary. And when we got into our consult with the oncologist, we said, we would really like to explore cannabis as a way to keep him more comfortable throughout his treatment. He was already in palliative care. We weren't looking for a cure. We were just looking for ways to keep him comfortable throughout his treatments. And his oncologist said to us, if you want to use cannabis, find yourself a new oncologist, because I'm not interested in that. And this was in 2012. It had been cannabis had already been legal for, 10, 11 years for medical patients. And so that was very disappointing. And we were like, F it. We're going to get, we bought, 3 keys off of a biker gang. And right, because that was, as we tried to get the whatever primo stuff we could get, we wanted the best. It cost us a fortune. And I was 6 months pregnant at the time. So here I am with all this weed. And we just made him an RSO. We did like an alcohol extraction, and I'm cooking this up in our backyard because I was like, we can't do this in the house. It's going to stink. I don't want to blow myself up either because you're heating alcohol.
This is an amazing story. 6 months pregnant, dealing with the bikers with 3 kilograms of fucking dope.
Yeah. And also,
yeah,
I had to get grain alcohol. So I walked into a liquor store and asked for a case of, Everclear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And they're looking at me like I'm visibly pregnant. And I'm like, I'm just making tinctures. Like I'm making herbal tinctures. Like, I'm not going to drink this. Like, don't worry. And they're like, okay. So we're like outside, like cooking this up on a little hot plate and, basically cooking off the alcohol. And I looked at my husband and I'm just like, I feel like we're in an episode of like Breaking Bad.
Life has gone strange on me somewhere.
Right. And, but you know what? It helped him like so much. We started him on that. We used to have to sneak it. We'd sneak it in. We'd go into the hospital because he eventually was in palliative care in a hospital setting. And
you had to
we would
sneak
go
it
in.
into him?
We had to sneak it in. We couldn't tell anybody that that's what he was on. We used to rub it on his gums, and it made a huge difference. He had high blood pressure. And was on like a whole bunch of statins and whatnot. He had to come off all of that stuff because the cannabis actually corrected his high blood pressure. So there were so many other like effects to it. But it really just kept him comfortable. that was the main thing. It kept him comfortable. He was able to eat. He was able to sleep.
It's a good
You know,
drug.
he brought his pain levels down, and just made him comfortable in his last days, and passed away in 2013.
I'm sorry to hear
Um,
that.
and but that kind of kick-started our cannabis journey. And then later on, a couple of years later, I met, you know, a good friend of mine, and she, similar story. She had a friend with skin cancer, and she was making topicals, and her friend said, I don't want to consume cannabis, but can you put it in a topical for me?
Yeah.
And so she started doing that, and then her and I started working together. I started helping her make topicals for basically the gray market, and we shut all that down right before legalization. We shut everything down. We shut down topicals, edibles, everything, because we were like, we're going legal.
Yeah.
We've now got an opportunity. We both had families. You know, every time I've seen an RCMP officer, I'm like white knuckling, like, and it's not a great feeling when you have
No.
3 kids, you know,
I mean,
and
I don't know about the kids, but I get that it's not a great feeling. Like
no, it's not a great feeling. We, and it's not a great feeling for most people in the illicit market. Nobody wants to get arrested. Nobody wants to be put in that position for doing something that they love and that they're doing because it helps people, and they're doing it because people can't have affordable access to these products. And so, you know, there's a lot of us out there like that. And then there's a lot out there that will never, ever transition. You know,
yeah.
you've got guerrilla growers out there. The reason that they're growing is because they want to be off grid.
And
They're
I
not
don't want to be
interested.
part of the
They
circle.
do not want to be a part of anything that has to do with the government. And I get that too. I get that too. And I feel like those people should be left in peace to do their own thing and grow. I'll never be one that calls for more enforcement. I really think things should be relaxed a lot more. You know, when it comes to medical patients and being able to grow for medical patients, the rigmarole you have to go through. So we grew for a 6-year-old that had medulloblastoma, which is another type of brain tumor, and I was making suppositories for him. And to get a designated grower and like to go through the whole application process and whatnot, it's so onerous, and it shouldn't be when there's already so much stress on a family when their child is this sick.
It
And
genuinely seems like they set it up to be impossible in a lot of ways. Like
they did because of the stigma, and they don't want to make it easy. But I think that's changing. I have faith that it's going to change, and that you know, they're going to start seeing like how a lot of it has to do with research, you know, having medical research. However, like, you know, oh, there's not enough research. It's not enough research. Take a look at Israel. It's been
mm,
illegal in Israel forever. But yet Dr. Meshulam in the 70s was able to isolate THC.
or even
He's
Amsterdam, right? Like how long has
right?
Amsterdam been doing medical?
But, well, Amsterdam is decriminalized. So it's a little bit different. There's not necessarily medical, it's that it's decriminalized there. Israel is totally legal. I believe they've worked towards legality now,
Wasn't
but their
the Amsterdam,
university,
sorry, wasn't the Amsterdam Compassion Club thing early on medical thing before they had it legal? It was
it
like
probably was a medical thing, but it's not necessarily legal in the country for medical. It's
right, right.
decriminalized. So if you got caught with it, you're not necessarily going to end up in jail, is kind of how that works. Same in Portugal.
I've actually made that argument with people. I've been on the side of decriminalization instead of legalization because of the fact that now that they legalize it, they have it in their hand. But if they decriminalize it, it's like tomatoes, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I think it all should be, all of it
yeah.
should
Leave me
be,
alone.
yeah, just make
Just
safe supply. Yeah, get safe supply out there. And you know, the testing is where that can really be mitigated, you know. Um, Like, you know, I don't want cannabis that's been doused in pesticides,
Me
you know.
neither.
So testing for it. And there's a lot of growers that don't do that, you
I
know.
mean, I mean, we all existed in the black market for how many years, and there was no testing. You just knew if you bought a bag of weed that was gross, you don't buy from that
Mhm.
guy again, right?
Yeah.
No, the market corrects. Um,
Yeah.
totally wild. I also got into it because of medical for similar reasons, just because like there is a serious moment where you say fuck it, because the way it is set up, you're supposed to sit in that hospital bed and take their pills, and like their pills are worse. There's no getting around it. They're just worse. They can make you constipated. They gave me the worst gut reactions. Like everything inside of me started like shutting down,
Oh,
and
like all of the pain medications, you mean? Yeah.
100%, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, so any of
And
the opioids.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I can't remember if tramadol was a real opioid or whether it was a synthetic, but I was on like codeine, tramadol, T3s, and there was a literal morphine drip at one point. So like every sort of thing was getting bombed out. And a couple weeks into my injury, where I wasn't in the hospital because they didn't have a hospital bed for me, they put a bunch of bolts through me and sent me home to sit on my couch. And it was at that point where I put the pill bottle on the nightstand, and I got my little brother to go to the dealer, and he grabbed my bong, and I still have 75% of those pills. Just didn't take them. I sat there on the couch getting stoned. I got a lot more stoned than I ever had to get before, but it
Mhm.
definitely worked, you know, like I smoke a lot of weed now, and it's expensive, but I can walk around like I'm not even injured. And I'm not saying that that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't smoked weed. Like there's no control group who could say, but I genuinely believe that smoking weed has helped my pain like no other.
Yeah. And way less side effects, you know.
100%.
Your liver and your kidneys are thanking you. Because you know, those types of drugs, they are very, there's a place for them, and
Agreed.
there are pains that weed's not going to touch.
Agreed.
You know, but the great thing about cannabis is that it is a potentiator, and so some of those drugs, if you're on them, you can actually use less if you're using them in tandem with cannabis. And you know, and that's a medical thing. I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, I
It's from years of research that I've done, and I'm just speaking to my experience with it, and people who have consumed cannabis in tandem with opioids. And you know, for the many medical doctors that do prescribe cannabis that I've seen speak at multiple cannabis trade shows and conferences. And you know, there is definitely research out there that shows that is the case. You know, Parkland Flower, we're on the recreational side, so we're not supposed to talk about medical. But the fact of the matter is that people are having a hard time accessing medical cannabis through the current stream, and they are going to retailers for their medicine.
yep.
And what's the difference between recreational cannabis and medical cannabis?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that there shouldn't be, but if you look at the law and like the books, there
Well,
is,
what is the difference
well, the
on the
medical,
actual product? In the actual product, is there a difference?
none, but
Right?
on the books, medical they can't take, right? Recreational they can just take, but medical it's like some sort of legal right. I remember my uncle was super enraged when all of this stuff started happening with recreational, because he put in a lot of work. He put in work to get medical, right? Because
Mhm.
he's an old guy, and he's always used weed, and he's always been annoyed that it wasn't a medicine, and so all of a sudden it was, and he's like, we got to
Mhm.
use this, right? And then they put out recreational weed, and all of his medical producers start putting out rec weed, and he's just losing his mind. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it's hard. Like, Canadians today still can't access medical cannabis, and that is a tragedy. You know,
and
there's not
and the
enough doctors
prices are a
prescribing.
tragedy too. Like the prices not going down after production
The
is no
fact that
longer illegal.
that medical cannabis is taxed is criminal.
It's criminal.
It is. Yeah, I fully believe that. No other prescriptions in Canada are taxed. Why is cannabis taxed? tax it to death on the rec side if you feel it's not the best way to stamp out the illicit market, which is your mandate. But when it comes to the medical side, why are you taxing patients?
Well,
Patients that vast majority are on disability. They're dealing with the amount of stress a family goes under when you have chronic health issues. I know I have a daughter with cystic fibrosis, and your stress levels are compounded. And then you add financial issues to that, which is, the cost of your medicine.
yeah.
And it makes it so difficult. So it's, yeah, it'll change. It will. We're going to get there. We still have a lot of advocacy to do, and we still have so far to go in the industry. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and to have gotten our license and to be able to produce cannabis for Canadians. And we can't give up. A lot of people said, okay, it's legal, we're good. But
Yeah.
it can't stop. We can't stop. We have to continue to work towards making it better.
Hey, it's amazing to see an Alberta company, local. I like to support things that are nearby.
Yeah. Yeah, and we want our cannabis in local Alberta stores. That's what we're so excited about. Like, when my friends say, what store is it going to be in? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea yet. Like, and it depends on who processes our cannabis and all that kind of stuff too. So, I'd love to be able to package my own. We're working on our processing amendment. We're not there yet. So, our first few harvests are probably going to be processed by another license holder. And that's just the way it works right now. But
Yeah.
I want to see micros really work together, get treated fairly by processors and by the government, by the distribution model, or the provincial distribution. And we're working towards that. We do have the AGLC, we speak to them regularly, and which is great. And they're excited. Everyone like harps on the government and whatnot, but I can tell you right now, the AGLC is excited for more craft growers and more micros, and they are about supporting small business. They did it with the craft beer industry and the craft distillers,
That's a
and
good
they
point.
do see that, and they're and as we continue to engage them and speak to them, they become even more on board and more comfortable. That's the other thing. Like, they are way more comfortable now with legalization and cannabis than they were 2 years ago. Like, dramatic difference from when I first started working with them till now. Those things are great to see. I mean, it's like my mom. My mom, if I ever got caught smoking weed when I was a kid, she used to tell me that she was going to march me across the street because I lived right across the street from the RCMP. And she'd be like, if I ever catch you with weed, we're going to just walk you right over there. So, I just never got caught.
Exactly.
But it's, even she's changed because she's got some health problems as she ages, and aging is just a general wearing out process that cannabis really helps, and you can see that just in sales. The seniors have
Yeah.
been one of the top growing markets in Canada, and so that stigma is changing, not just with the government but just with Canadians in general, and that's really, really heartening to see.
It makes perfect sense that seniors should be like, I don't understand why you would want to retire and not have a bunch of weed in your back pocket.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so what kind of plant limit are you I mean, you said you got your 25 square feet, right?
200 square meters. So it's
200 square
21,
meters.
yeah, square meters. So it's 2,153 square feet. So there's no plant limit. You can sea of green it, or you could grow monsters. You can do it however you want.
What is
Um,
your tactic there? That's actually a really interesting thought.
so we're doing sea of green. So just,
Yep.
veg for about 2 weeks, smaller plants, quicker turnaround, flower for about 7 weeks, depends on the cultivar, but we try to, some of our selection of our genetics has, the
Short
turnaround
flower,
time in flower makes the difference.
100%.
Because you can get another harvest in, right? When you're indoor, you can get almost like a full harvest per year, which is really big, makes a difference. Some outdoor grows, they're growing monsters. They're growing outdoor and they're growing like big beefy plants, but they only have one harvest a year, right? So that's the difference, and we've been trying to work on the government with that as well, to allow for outdoor farmers to have a little bit more square footage, because they are at a disadvantage in that, they'll only be able to produce one, maybe two harvests in a year in their square footage.
Is it only one or the other? Can you not have a indoor outdoor grow, or is it
You
just
can have an indoor outdoor grow. Yeah, absolutely. You just have to be within that square footage.
Right.
Yeah.
Sea of green. That's interesting. I mean, it makes perfect
It
sense.
just means like we trellis everything. It's just basically wall to wall plants.
I
They're
know what you mean.
fairly close together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you start like 1,000 little clones instead of 6 bigger plants. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's genius if there's no plant
Well,
limit.
there's lots of we're just starting out. I mean, we might discover that it might be better for us to grow a little bit of a bigger plant, but we're growing in sea cans. So like we're literally growing in containers. So you only have an 8-foot height in those. So you kind of have to figure out which cultivar you want. A nice short squat plant so you don't burn them out if they stretch too much to the lights. They just get them praying really good and grow them out. It's exciting. We just transplanted yesterday. We're like 2 weeks in, and so we transplanted 300 clones this week, and just starting out 2 rooms, seeing how we can get our environments going, and then we'll propagate out for the other 2.
So you're growing in a sea can, and you've got
Like so old school.
that's the ideal situation though, because then that means you have to dial in every environmental factor though.
Yeah, and then you can do lots of R&D, which is
Exactly.
cool. You can do different environments. Dialing in your VPN is a lot easier when you got a smaller room. It's easier to control. There's less risk of contaminating an entire harvest, right? So if you have an outbreak in one room, it won't necessarily go to the other room. So, it helps to mitigate your risk as well with
Uh,
smaller rooms.
for a backstep there, can you explain to the people what VPN is? I'm pretty sure you're talking about vapor, right?
Yeah, vapor. What is it? Vapor barrier, something pressure.
Barometric
Vapor
something.
barometric. Yeah, pressure barometric, something like that.
It's something.
It's basically
Humidity.
the humidity, but it's also your wind flow. Like there's a whole bunch of factors to it. My grower can explain it to you all day long.
It's above
All
my
I
head.
know is that he just says VPN's on point right now, and I'm like,
That's
great.
good. That's
you know,
that's
and I'm
very
like,
good.
great. Tell me what to do. I'm really good at defoliating plants. I'm really good at harvesting, trimming, all of that labor stuff. He just comes in, tells me what needs to be done, and I get to work.
He's
And
got all the
there's
nerd lore.
yeah, he is total nerding out, and he works with a lot of he really collaborates with a lot of growers down in like California. He's always chatting with like Kevin Jodry and those guys down there, and just talking about what's to come up here and what are some of the best methods, especially for indoor, because it's such a finicky, you have a lot. You don't have mother nature, right? You don't have
Uh-huh.
mother nature coming through with wind, and you don't have mother nature's sun, and so you're really trying to mimic mother nature in an enclosed environment. And so you're reading up, you've got all kinds of sensors everywhere, and gauges and thermostats, and you're injecting CO2 and all of this stuff, and it's a total science and an art at the same time. It's
100%.
right? Like,
It's a
you
mad
know,
science, because
it's
like
totally a mad science
there's
that it,
nobody in a university lab in a white coat figuring this out. This is somebody in their basement where it's like a can of beer
yeah,
figuring this out.
yeah, but there's tons of science in those universities that really help. We are working with some plant scientists from the University of Alberta. You know, um, we really want to keep a local innovation and all of that kind of stuff. And so we have engaged the faculty of
The,
plant science
the
at the U of
horticultural.
A. Yeah, and it's great. Like they're so interested in it because cannabis is not like any other plant
It
out
is
there. Like
the best plant.
it's such a unique plant with such unique compounds, and so
I'm
the
not sure.
massive array of research that can be done on plant science and medical science and all kinds of things, it just makes it really, really fascinating.
I can't remember the nerdy word for the fact that cannabis has two genders. It's like dio. What I can't remember right now, but I don't know if cannabis is unique in having male and female plants, but it is definitely special and it is fun to grow.
It's not a unique trait, but like lots of flowers have male and female parts, right? So,
On the
you
plant, yeah,
like
but like
on their own plant,
plant,
right? Whereas you need to, I think canola is the same in that in order for it to make canola seed, the males have to
pollinate, yeah.
pollinate the females. So like there are lots of plants that are like two separate males and females, but the cannabinoid, like the actual like the compounds, there's like they think there's about 150 cannabinoids, not just THC or CBD, there's
Yeah,
CBN,
the
CBG,
whole
all of
spectrum.
them. And cannabis is the only plant that produces cannabinoids, which makes it super unique. And so, like, so much room for research, so much room.
I'm definitely excited to learn how to do some RSO stuff from you because it sounds like you're
It's super simple. It's such an easy process. You just get yourself some grain alcohol. You soak your cannabis. Usually, like I use, like lots of times, if I'm doing an RSO, I'll put everything in my sugar leaves, everything, because you just get all of it.
yeah.
You just do a quick alcohol wash. You
Pa-
strain it, and then you burn off the alcohol. That's it. That's
sorry,
all there is to it.
sorry
Just
to
look it
pause.
up.
What do you use the roots?
Do we use the roots? Not yet. Roots. I really want to explore using the different compounds in the roots for topicals. There's a woman in BC. She's a PhD, and she's been studying cannabis root balls for tinctures and for topicals. And again, there are some compounds that the roots produce that the plant does not,
Exactly.
and so there's so much room. The roots make some sequesterpenes and some really,
Localized.
really yeah, some really interesting compounds that have not been researched much yet. We have to destroy all that right now. We have to destroy the root balls. We have to destroy any trim that we take off the plants, like like when we're
Yeah.
defoliating and all of that kind of stuff. We have to destroy it all.
What do you mean?
So, as per the Health Canada licensing, now we
Like
can
you have to
start taking
compost it? You're not
yeah,
allowed
we
to
have
use
to.
it.
Well, you can, but you have to have a product for it, right, to go to market. And so right now, the market is so new that if I came out with a cannabis root ball um,
Well, I know somebody who'd be very happy,
compound, but what I'm saying is that if it doesn't have a THC CBD listing on it,
right?
there's not a market there for it yet because the market's not educated enough for it yet. So, and you also have to have it in the medical market. Yeah, you might have a little bit more room there, but for the recreational market, I can't put on a cannabis topical that this is going to help eczema because that's a medical condition and we can't speak to that in the recreational market. So that is where a lot of research and development has to come into play, and we're getting there. We're getting there, and we will, but we can't even use CBD as a nutraceutical yet in Canada. It's still has to be under cannabis license. You can't, like in the US, in some states, you can buy CBD at a gas station, but you can't do that here in Canada. You can only buy CBD in a cannabis store. So I
What
eventually,
what's a nutraceutical?
it's so anything like vitamins, supplements,
Ah,
like things that you would buy in a health food store.
over the counter.
This is where over the counter. This is where I would see like CBD, non-intoxicating CBD products, right? Where they
Exactly, yeah.
doesn't impair you.
The
I
root
there
tinctures.
Yeah, and so root tinctures and root topicals and things like that would
Yeah, full
be a
spectrum.
great thing to be able to have in those types of stores, like health food stores and whatnot. But we're not there yet. The regulations are not there yet. The government's not there yet, and that's okay. We're there; they'll get there. But we also still have to research what the benefits are. We know that is a benefit to it. What is it that about those compounds that make it a benefit? We don't understand that yet. Maybe we never will. But I'm willing to find out more.
There's only one way to find out, right? We got to
And I got to keep at it.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I got to get back to work, and I really appreciate you having me on. This was a great conversation.
I mean, I'm thrilled you came on. I'm glad to have a moment of your time. I'll have to have you back on to get an update how things go.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. And for anyone out there, if you're interested in learning more about Alberta's landscape or how to get started, what are the first steps to going for a micro cultivation license, you can check us out at the acmla.ca. So that's the Alberta Cannabis Micro License Association. You can sign up for a free membership right now. We're still in the early stages of getting going, and yeah, we're keep working hard to bring cannabis to Albertans and Canadians across the country.
all right. I wrote down that website. I'm gonna put it in the show notes, and I'm gonna add
Awesome.
my own account.
Great.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge, Kieley.
Thanks so much, Josh, for having me. You have a great day.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.